welcome to In Our Community. My name is Liz Holtz, and I'll be your host for this evening. Our guest tonight is Cristine Mincheff, and Cristine is here to tell us a little bit about a group that she's a member of, the Third Order of the Society of St. Francis of Assisi. Welcome, Cristine.
Thank you.
How are you today?
Pretty good.
Great. So I'm curious to learn more about this, but first off, I'd like to find out a little bit more about St. Francis of Assisi. I mean, many of us know him as the patron saint of animals, but don't really know that much more about him, much less that, you know, he has these societies that follow his teachings.
Right.
So could you tell us a little bit about St. Francis of Assisi and who he was?
St. Francis was the son of a wealthy cloth merchant in Assisi in Italy, and born in 1180 something or other like that. And he lived as a young man. He lived the life of a carefree young man with lots of money, lots of parties, lots of horses and clothing and friends and so forth. Lots of drinking, I'm sure. And he, at the time that Assisi was having a battle with a nearby city called Perugia, he was called up to be in the army, and unbeknownst to the people in Assisi, the Perusians were pretty well skilled in military things and were ready for them, and so many Assisians were taken captive, including Francis. And he spent a year in a cold, dark prison, and I'm sure that he was able to do a lot of reading and a lot of thinking at that time. And I think that that's where probably the basis of his a much more introverted Francis came forward. Later on, he had a calling, he thought, to serve the Pope, and the Pope was mounting another crusade, so second or third crusade, and he decided to go and be a knight for the Pope. His father kitted him out with armor and with lots of clothing and gear and a horse, a fine horse, and he set off. But about halfway along in the trip, he had a dream one night where God asked him, why do you serve an earthly master when you could serve the true master? And he took that as a sign that he was not to go to war, but in fact came back and decided to serve God. He also had various other visions and dreams which started him on his path of transformation. It was not an overnight transformation, and I'm sure it took a long time. And during that period of time, he ended up giving everything back to his father that he formerly had, clothing and money and anything that he had, and becoming saying to the world that God was his father, and that was the only father he was going to have. He had to break away from his father in order to carry on the work that he wanted to do.
I see. And at the time, now, this particular group is part of the Anglican Church. So this is not part of the Catholic Church. It's part of the Anglican Church, which was the Church of England that broke away from the Catholic Church.
Right.
But they also still serve the Pope. And of course, during the times you were talking about, the church was a huge, powerful entity, basically ruling the rulers of the world, as well as all the lands and things like that. Pretty much, whatever the Pope said went, and there was a lot of dealings with marriages for treaties and things like that. So how did the church react when basically Francis of Assisi kind of wanted to make changes?
I think that he had a very, very fine line to walk. He had to be very careful. Religious organizations at the time, religious orders in the Catholic Church tended to see daily life as being unclean and a part that they wanted to deny. And so they had monasteries and convents and so forth in order to get away, in order to wall themselves off, to isolate themselves from daily life. And Francis viewed following Christ, which was his most important feeling. He wanted everyone to follow Christ as being in the world, not apart from the world. And so he, rather than closing himself up and taking a lot of money and building a fancy place to live, he actually became a beggar for Christ, basically. He begged for his food, and if they said, well, yes, you can have some, but you have to, shovel some hay or something, then he would do that. And in this preaching all the time to whoever would listen. And I think the legend with the animals comes from the fact that he often practiced his sermons in front of the animals, and I'm sure that was a very endearing characteristic. But certainly Francis' whole idea was that he loved all of creation, because all of creation is God's gift to us, not just the ability to think and to live in a monastery, but all of creation.
So the group that you're with is the Third Order of the Society of St. Francis of Assisi. So what are the other two orders?
Okay. Originally, religious orders were founded. They had either monks or nuns. They were separate, of course, and they lived in a community together, and all their property was in common, so that when someone became a monk or a nun, they gave everything they had to the convent, and it was put in a general kitty, and that's what they lived off of. And then they also had various things that they did. Some were teachers, some were nurses, some were just itinerant preachers or whatever, and they made a living that way as well, or they supplemented their funds.
Or produced fine things like brandies, right?
That's right. Breads and all kinds of things. And so monks and nuns in that kind of a relationship were called first order religious persons.
Okay.
And then the third orders were created because many of the religious leaders realized that people wanted to live in the spirit of contemplation or prayer or loving kindness or something like that. They wanted to live in that spirit, but they already had commitments in the world. They already had a family and a job, and perhaps many people counted on them for various things, and they couldn't very well throw that all down and go live in a monastery. And so most of these religious orders devised a third order in which people could live a rule of life, and they could live as closely to these principles as possible without throwing over their regular life. And in the Episcopal Church, or I should say the Anglican Church, religious orders were banned for a long time, and then they developed some. People were saying, well, we feel called to live a religious life, and of course the groups got together choosing the person that they felt the need to copy or to imitate
with.
Right. And so that was why a group chose Francis and became the Third Order of the Society of St. Francis. And at the same time, there was a First Order created. So there are some Franciscan, Anglican, Episcopalian, Franciscan friars.
Okay.
And there are also some female nuns. And they actually have separate convents up in San Francisco. And then there are many Third Order groups all over the world.
Okay. And then what is the Second Order?
The Second Order in the case of Francis, St. Francis was an order started by St. Clare. Clare was a contemporary of Francis, and they feel that she was possibly even a friend of his. She wanted to become a Franciscan. She wanted to follow Francis. But the Pope and most of the powers that be at the time said, well, you are a fine young noblewoman. There's no way you'll survive on the streets trying to beg. You won't be pretty. It won't go nice. And so they insisted that she become a part of a cloistered order. So as a form of compromise, she did that, and they became, they lived in an old church in San Damiano, and they did nursing. And then contemplative stuff, prayer as well.
So kind of what we would modernly call like an outreach program.
Yes, yes.
Oh, yes. So then, How did St. Francis of Assisi go from, starting to teach to, I mean, what were his primary teachings? What are the tenets, if you will, that the orders follow?
Francis felt that you had more of you were less encumbered in your journey towards having a close relationship with God if you lived a simple life, if you modeled as closely as you could Jesus Christ, and if you studied and worked hard to help and to share that love with others, and then also to make God known and loved everywhere. So those were the basic, principles of the order.
That's considering the time that he was contemplating all this and starting to preach, and the fact that the churches were so strong, and many very political. They could, grant somebody a cardinalship or lands. They could seize lands, and of course were very wealthy. And several of the popes are well known for, so let's say, their debaucheries. Yeah. So it seems like, here's the formal church kind of in this craziness where anything goes, and a lot of money, a lot of power, and he's very much going the opposite direction. And that didn't create any sort of a clash between him and the church. He
survived that very well because it was a very delicate road, and he managed it extremely well. He got lucky in a way. There were several popes at the time, Innocent the First, I believe, being the first one, who saw that the people following Francis was becoming a huge group. Mm-hmm. I mean, it wasn't but a few months, and he already had 3,000 followers. So they saw that it was becoming a very huge group, and they saw that it was appealing to this new merchant class that was growing in Europe at the time. And the Pope knew very well that he was right. This Pope Innocent had been trained as a preacher and a religious person, and so he knew what the Bible was about, and he knew what Francis was saying, and I think he saw the writing on the wall that things were going to go that direction in the future. And so he tried very hard, and he and Francis, I'm sure, compromised and came to some ways of operating things so that Francis could still live this simple life in poverty and have people behind him, and that would affect the church in good ways. Mm-hmm. And that the Pope and the other powers that be would try to take the best of that and incorporate it into the future for the church.
Very cool. So I know the group that you're in. I guess at a local level, they're fellowships. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then there's larger groups. So can you tell us a little bit about how that breaks down?
Sure.
The hierarchy within the, I guess it's not really a church because it's a segment of the church.
Right. So there's a worldwide organization, the Society of St. Francis. And the worldwide order, the third order, is a worldwide order. And there are groups in various areas of the world. And in the group of which I am a member is the province of the Americas, including North and Central and South America. And there are about something over 600 members in our group. Doesn't sound very big, but we do stay in touch because we are a community, and that's how we live the Franciscan life, is that we help each other. Mm-hmm. Obviously, getting together is not very common occurrence, but thank goodness modern technology is making that a lot easier to do with Skype and Google Hangouts and all the wonderful things that allow people to communicate. And so the groups, the fellowships basically try to meet on a fairly regular basis. Our fellowship here in Northern California goes from Willits in the north of California, right next to the Oregon border, all the way down to Monterey, and there are 13 of us. So as you can imagine, we don't meet all together very often, but we try to meet in groups here and there, and that's how we stay in touch. And essentially meetings are in order to have that sense of community and that sense that someone is supporting you in your journey and the hardships of living a simple life in America today.
Which must be a bit of a challenge to live something of a simple life. No, obviously not as much as say the Amish,
right?
But in a technological society, and especially in an area like Silicon Valley, where power and money and things that are kind of cross to the tenets that St. Francis taught, or kind of gives it a little bit of a push-pull, if you will.
Really, they do. And one of the things that I had to learn very early on was that a lot of times in our society, advertising would have us believe that if something is beautiful, we should have it. And I certainly fell prey to that many, many times. But one of the things that I've learned as a Franciscan is to enjoy beautiful things from afar. And oftentimes they are more beautiful in their location, wherever that may be, than they would be, hanging around my neck or a ring on my finger or something like that. So it's been a struggle to get that far. But in fact, my life is so much simpler as a result of that. I don't have to worry about a lot of little things and where did I put that and when am I going to wear that and how much should I insure it for, or all of those things. I don't have those worries.
Well, it sounds very similar to like the Buddhist belief that if you have an attachment to something, that you should give it away because you shouldn't have that attachment.
The attachments are like a blockage. They're a little stone in the way of your journey towards your relationship with God. And the attachments will distract you. And so yes, it's really very, very similar. We have some Franciscans who are in fact Buddhists as well. And we just had a weekend discussing that, in fact, one of our retreats. And so yes, we have very similar tenets in that regard. You have to get rid of attachments.
Well, so it sounds as though to be a Franciscan or to take in the Franciscan lifestyle, if you will, or not really a lifestyle, I guess, life path might be a better choice of words, that it's not required that you be a member of the Anglican Church, that it sounds as though you also it's open to people of other religious persuasions.
There's actually a third order group of Catholic Franciscans. They're called the Secular Order of the Order of Secular Franciscans. There is a group called the Order of Ecumenical Franciscans, and that's where we find lots of Quakers, Presbyterians, and other faiths. And then because the Lutherans and the Episcopalians have a relationship in this country, we are part of the Third Order, the Society of St. Francis specifically. And you have to be either a Lutheran or an Episcopalian to join the Third Order of the Society of St. Francis. But for those who aren't, these other orders exist in order to accomplish the same thing for other groups.
So do they ever have like regional or national or even global meetings where all the different orders of St. Francis come together?
As a matter of fact, they do. There is a group that puts together a group meeting. In fact, I went to one a year or two ago right here in San Jose, and on the east side of San Jose. A wonderful meeting, and there were persons from the ecumenical and persons like myself from the Third Order of the Society, and then there were also the Order of Secular Franciscans from the Catholic Church. And so yes, we were all together and we talked about Francis and living the Franciscan life, and it was very cool.
Yeah, because when most people think of Franciscan monks, they think of the dark brown robes,
Right.
the kind of hairball haircut,
Yeah.
and of course, brandy and wines and things
Right.
like that. So. I understand that as part of being a Franciscan is that you have a 7 holy habits that are part of a code of conduct.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The 7 holy habits are really kind of they go throughout all of the different denominations, Christian denominations, because they're in fact mentioned in the Bible, and there are things about having Eucharist, studying, praying, a number of things, ways that you live, living simply, loving, having loving kindness for others, even loving your enemy, things like that. All of these sort of things become these 7 holy habits, and I can't remember exactly what they are right now, but they are part of, mostly the Christian religion is dedicated in general to developing these 7 holy habits in the ways whichever denomination thinks is the way to do it.
So I'm not familiar with, I've heard the term Eucharist, but I'm not familiar with what exactly that is. Could you?
The Catholics would call that a Mass.
Okay.
It's the communion.
Okay.
Communion. Most people know it as communion.
Okay. All right. And then, so these are more like moral guidelines, if you will,
Yes.
of tenets of how one might want to aspire to live one's life,
Right.
To follow in the footsteps of St. Francis of Assisi.
Right.
And do you find that this helps, that these tenets help you in guiding you on your spiritual journey?
Absolutely. When you, what I learned as part of, in the beginning, as part of my formation, you're really in formation your whole life, but was that prayer is like a conversation with God. Sometimes it even involves complete silence. And it's being open to what God has to say to you. And so that became that was a trick to develop that ability to listen, and it's something that I have to practice on a regular basis. So prayer becomes very important, and like I say, it's a conversation with God, and it's listening to God, and He listens to you too. So it's a great very personal thing between you and God. So prayer is part of my life. Being kind and working in whatever way I can for social justice, for environmental justice. All of those things are a very important part of my life, and they're the way Francis would have done things too.
So I understand that part of what the followers of St. Francis of Assisi want to do is that part of your intention is to help to promote world peace.
Correct.
And so how does the organization itself go about doing that?
We actually have members in all walks of life, including a member who represents us in Washington, D.C. And I guess you might call him a lobbyist of sorts. But he helps when congressmen have something they want to, or congressmen or senators have something they want to understand, that touches on religion or the Franciscan way of life. They can contact this man and learn a lot from him. And in being in all walks of life, we touch the world in many different ways. I'm a veterinarian. I have friends who are psychologists and doctors, and I have friends who have worked as probation officers and police officers, and just people in every walk of life, housewives, everything. And so we end up touching the world and trying to be good examples wherever we are.
That's a wonderful thing. If someone in our audience wanted to learn more about the Third Order of the Society of St. Francis of Assisi, or some of the other, or St. Francis of Assisi himself and the organizations are formed around him, the Franciscans, how would they go about doing that?
There is a lovely website. It's just been revamped, and it really is a very nice website, tssf.org. And all the information can be found on there on how to contact someone if they were going to go that far and be that interested. Otherwise, there's a lot of information, and there's even a library of materials about St. Francis. And certainly your own public library probably has a really good selection of things about the different saints.
Yeah, and boy, there are a lot of saints.
Yes, yes.
Okay, Steph. Well, I mean, this has been really fascinating, and I think it's adorable that you're not only a Franciscan under the Order of St. Francis of Assisi, but a veterinarian as well. Extremely fitting, considering he's the patron saint of animals, amongst other things. And so I think you said basically, the things that they want you to, that the society wants to spread is they want to make sure that God was known and loved by everyone, that you want to spread the spirit of love and harmony, and that living simply was a good way of life. Words of wisdom. Cristine, I would love to thank you so much for this evening. You have been tremendous.
Thank you.
And very informational. And I hope that our viewers will take an interest in this and check it out and find out some more about your organization.
Super. I hope they do too.
So, again, the website was
www.tssf.org.
Okay. And what is the Society of St. Francis? So tssf.org.
Right.
All right. Wonderful. And you also have a group in San Jose as well.
We don't. We just, there's some people.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So our viewers can check that out.
Right.
All right. Well, wonderful. And do you have any last words of advice for our viewers?
For those who are seeking the spiritual life, check out a religious order. You may be called to that.
That's good words of wisdom. Thank you so much.
Thank you.